What up, home skillets? It's about to get crunk in here. Wouldn't you say, you fart knocker, Dakota?
Word, homie. Word.
Oh, man. Hello, peoples. We are the Dakota Boys Talk Movies. And today, we are going to do a 90s episode. We're going to talk about some movies from the 90s that we appreciate. This kind of came out of the fact that Dakota and I really came into our own in the 90s. The 90s was kind of our decade, Dakota.
It was a great time to be alive.
It was.
Back when men were men, and I don't know where I was going with that.
Back when men were men. That's all you need to know. Men were men, and gack was gack, and we all wanted to be slimed. You know you wanted to be slimed.
Very true.
And make it through the hidden temple that no one could make it through before they were snatched by a guard. And then their partner couldn't make it. So, yeah. So we're excited to get into that. We're each going to give just kind of some movies that are, just kind of some of our favorites, but at the same time, ones that we just feel like kind of, it's hard to know the right word to use. I don't know if they defined us so much as just kind of really set the tone for the things we liked and kind of what we grew up knowing and maybe things we said or how we looked at things. And so we're going to talk about some of those movies. And so let's get into it. Dakota.
Yes.
What is one of your movies that you would like to bring up and bring to people's attention, maybe even?
Ah, yes. Sit down, youngsters, and let me tell you a story here. There was once upon a time when this young video store clerk, who was completely unknown, came out of nowhere with this movie and blew everyone away. Next thing you know, he was the talk of Hollywood. Everybody wanted to work with him. I'm referring to Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino became famous with Reservoir Dogs. He went on to do a couple other things. Usually, though, when he wrote a script, he ended up, of course, directing it. There's only 2 times where he didn't. One would be Natural Born Killers, which I thought about using for this list, but that's a really dark movie, and it is not for everybody. Actually, I would say
arguably for no one.
60% of the population really cannot handle this movie, and I think it's odd because at the time, everyone was like, "Oh, this is the most important film of the decade." But that's we could talk about that some other time.
That's just because Tommy Lee Jones was in it.
Yeah. But the other movie that he wrote a screenplay for but didn't direct was True Romance, and oddly enough, it was kind of like the second part to the Natural Born Killers story.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who feel like that was the Natural Born Killers Tarantino wanted more than what Oliver Stone did. Is that kind of somewhat correct?
Yeah, I mean, Oliver Stone kind of took his script for Natural Born Killers, and did all sorts of things with it that Quentin Tarantino probably would have just gone a completely different direction with. And I can't... This movie was actually directed by Tony Scott, which is kind of odd.
The late Tony Scott. That'd be Ridley Scott's brother who died, I don't know, a couple of years ago now.
Yes, unfortunately. But this movie, I don't know. I wasn't really... when you're younger, you don't really kind of... If you're a boy, you don't really watch love story movies.
For the most part, yeah, you're right. Yep.
Yeah, especially me. I was. This is at a time when I was really.
Is this a kissing movie?
Yes, it is. At the same time, I was really into horror movies, and action movies were kind of just. I don't know. Once I saw RoboCop, I was like, "There's no topping RoboCop."
RoboCop.
Although Predator came close.
Predator is darn good.
Yeah. So I had seen this movie, I think, probably when I was like 12.
Okay, wow.
So it was
Yeah.
on, and I think it was on TNT, TNT or USA.
Okay.
So all the good parts were edited out, except all the blood squibs, because you could see his guy getting shot 5 times in the chest, but you can't say like a swear word.
Now, what movie was this that you saw on TNC or USA?
I'm referring to True Romance.
This is True Romance.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
And this movie kind of is an example for how a lot of action movies were made in the 90s. Ton of blood squibs. Just kind of like the story is like almost like a noir in a way, but really hard boiled too at the same time and very explicit.
When I think of cheesy 90s violence, I just think of the episode where Dakota brought up John Travolta's death in what movie was that? Broken Arrow?
Yes, Broken Arrow.
Where that whole scene is just over the top violence to a point where it's like almost cheesy campy or something. And it feels like that's kind of what the 90s was, where it was like it was like before the Wachowskis changed slow-mo by making slow-mo a bullet time type slow-mo. Before that, slow-mo just seemed really like out of place and cheesy, where they just like basically slowed down the frames and it was just like like weird turns with guns going up, and yeah, it was just kind of weird.
I think that was the turning point too, when people stopped using blood squibs so much too.
Was Matrix?
Yeah.
For
a movie with a lot of gunplay, like no blood squibs at all in the movie, which at the time I was like, this is odd. Why is that dude's chest exploding?
Yeah, so True Romance, huh?
Yeah, it stars Christian Slater. It's kind of this. That's one thing that always caught me about this movie. He's a nerd. Like, this isn't.
He seems nerdy.
Yeah, he's a comic.
It's Christian Slater.
He's a comic book nerd, and he meets up with this gorgeous woman.
Same thing happened to me.
Off the top of my head, she's just way, way out of his league. And
you're still talking about me.
Anyway, Steven, I don't have time to tell these people your life story, okay? Anyway, you find out that the woman he falls in love with and eventually marries is what we called back in the days a whore.
Oh, that is different from me.
And her pimp, played by Gary Oldman, with some dreads and incredibly heavy makeup and almost like a Jamaican-like accent.
I want you people to picture Commissioner Gordon from the Dark Knight trilogy with dreads and a Jamaican accent. That's basically what's going on here. It's just kind of a weird picture.
Yeah. Steven's seen the guy, what he looks like.
Oh yeah. You don't really Gary Oldman is unrecognizable.
Like Ron Perlman unrecognizable in Hellboy, people. That is the level of makeup.
It's about that level. Yeah, it's about that level.
Anyway, long story
Gary Oldman inspired by Flavor Flav or something.
Yeah. Anyway, to make a long story short, our hero of the movie named Clarence, odd name for some schmo living in Detroit. He was a comic book nerd. But he kind of kills this guy, and
how do you kill somebody?
It was an accident, but he escalated the level of murder by emptying a gun into him. Once again, it was the 90s, people.
Is this another one of those like alternative facts types things where it's like, well, it was an alternative kill. Like, it didn't really kill him.
Yeah, he just killed him a little, and then made sure he was dead a lot, I guess. But he takes a suitcase from this pimp's place that he believes is full of clothes that belong to his now wife. He, of course, gets back to their place. He tells her what happened, and she's just so touched. She starts crying and is like, "That's the most beautiful thing ever." Once again, it was the 90s. Next thing you know, the mob is on this too. There's a great scene with Christopher Walken where he plays this mobster, and the actor who played Clarence's dad in this, crap, he was an Easy Rider Easy Rider. Come on.
Was it Dennis Hopper?
Yes, it was Dennis Hopper. There's a great scene in this movie between Dennis Hopper and Christopher Walken, which I showed to Steven one time, and I don't think he knew what to make of it.
Oh, that scene. Yeah,
Yes.
that was weird.
And we see a young James Gandolfini in this.
Yes. Yeah, very young.
Yeah, it's kind of, and oddly enough, too, we see Val Kilmer, Chen, who is supposed to be playing Elvis in a couple scenes. And this movie was just really off.
Let's be fair.
Off.
We all wish Val Kilmer were in everything because he's crazy.
You mean 90s Val Kilmer?
90s Val Kilmer, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in Tombstone, he killed it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, Batman. But it's Val Kilmer.
Nobody could save that Batman movie he was in.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah. Let's just say it was better than the next one.
Anyway, this whole story is just kind of off the wall. It, you could say it's kind of a, if you were to sum it up, it's kind of like a traditional
Sounds like it.
noir story, but
Oh,
it's,
noir, yeah.
it's just so just drenched in 90s, from the hotel that they stay in to fashion, and just
I would even argue a white guy acting Jamaican. I mean, that was kind of a thing you did see. You did see in the 90s for some reason. I don't know what the deal was. Reggae, being reggae was just cool.
yeah, but it was just, and we talked about this earlier, me and Steven did, but action movies were just cut incredibly weird.
Yeah,
to the
like
style that they use now.
it's gonna be like how now, eventually, we're gonna look back and be like, man, why was everything shaky cam?
yeah.
Whereas we're looking at back now to the 90s going, it was like the editors, my goodness, they must have been busy because it wasn't digital. You know, having to cut all those scenes together was like cut, like having all these flashes of action.
yeah, the movies, especially the action movies, are cut really kind of quickly
Like
and
tight and fast.
almost like choppy in a way. Like you'd see one guy like get shot in the chest. The next thing you know, he was like flying backward
Yeah,
on
it would
the
be
ground.
like they almost like you missed something, and then at the same time, when something exploded, it would be the longest explosion ever, where you'd be like, either they kept repeating the explosion, or it exploded 4 different times.
Yeah.
Because it'd be like, boom, and then it would cut, boom, and then it would cut, boom. It's like, I think that was the same explosion. They just kept
and
cutting back.
They also kind of did this thing where when there was like a massive shootout going on, which it happens in this movie, it was kind of like they just let the actors go at it, because they'd get too into it and they'd start screaming and kind of like trying to channel Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator in
Or
a
like
way.
Scarface or something.
Yeah, and then everyone would just be. There was like almost no choreographed movements in this. People were just kind of firing and falling back, and once again, like stuff would be exploding and the walls would be coming down, and
Yeah.
that was. So if you want to really kind of get a movie that sums up 90s movies, this would be it. I mean, it even has Bronson Pinchot in it. And there's even a scene where Samuel L. Jackson gets killed in it, of all things.
Well, he's in everything.
Truly, he is.
Yep. Well, my first movie is a very defining 90s movie just because it's about divorce. And it seems like every movie in the 90s, somebody was getting a divorce or just got a divorce or whatever. There was just something with divorce going on. It was like every kids movie in the 90s was a broken home. It was just pitiful like that. And so that's why I'm going to have to say, or kind of on that note, I should say, my first movie is Mrs. Doubtfire. Mrs. Doubtfire came out in 1993, kind of in the early 90s, and it was directed by Christopher Columbus, basically hot off the 2 Home Alone movies. So this was kind of his whatever you want to call it, next big feature after the Home Alone movies, which were kind of what kickoff of the 90s type movies too. But this movie just started this other new era of putting people into fat suits and makeup that kind of happened for a while.
Yes.
And it kind of like started that whole thing. But this is just kind of, I think the other thing with this is just Robin Williams kind of right at his peak. I mean, the next few years after this, I mean, this was a hit. Then he was going to be the genie and define a new great Disney character with that. And then he was going to be win an Oscar for Good Will Hunting, and then in the midst of that have another family hit with Jumanji. And so I mean, it was just like this was like Robin Williams right in just like his peak of form. But what's interesting about this movie is something I more recently found out, in that it was supposed to be a home improvement movie.
Really?
It was supposed to be Tim Allen in the lead.
What?
And the movie was going to be Home Improvement, you know, was a big TV show, and they were going to bring it to the big screen using this premise where Tim and Jill were getting a divorce, and Tim, to be with the three boys, was going to dress up in drag and fat suits and be a nanny.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know what they would have, if the ending would have been different, because if they would have, to keep Home Improvement going, they would have had to keep Jill and Tim together. And so I don't know, but yeah, this movie just, every moment of it is funny. And at the same time, which is what Robin Williams, when he was at his best, was good at, was just like, he could be hilarious, and then the next minute, be very heartfelt. Just kind of do something that's very heartfelt. And that's what this movie really kind of hits, is like those two things kind of simultaneously, where it was just like, you'd be laughing, and then there'd be something really like, whatever you want to call it, really kind of heartwarming or heart-tugging or something like that kind of happened through this movie. And the other thing I really like about this movie is you had Pierce Brosnan in it before he was James Bond, and it was kind of him being like this suave new guy that Robin Williams just like didn't like. And so there's just kind of like the funny thing there too. And so yeah, I mean, most of you probably know this movie, have even seen it, but it's just one of those great movies, and I really think it really captures this kind of one kind of family comedy that happened in the 90s a lot, where there was always like divorce involved, and it was like the dad trying to win the family back or something like that happened in it, and then everybody kind of had to have some sort of life lesson at the end. But what was great about this one, it was just like hilarious in the meantime, and it was just an all-around funny movie. But obviously, it was Robin Williams was the one just killing it this whole time. And it's funny, I don't know, did you have this, Dakota, where when you watch this movie, so when he was Mrs. Doubtfire, sometimes you forgot that it was a guy, because Robin Williams is so convincing being this older woman. I kind of had that, and probably part of that is that I don't know what British people actually sound like. Maybe his British accent is probably actually terrible. But for someone in America who doesn't know accents very well, it just like, you just kind of bought him. He was just great in that aspect of it too.
Yeah,
which is why it's hard to picture Tim Allen doing that.
I think Pierce Brosnan most likely would have let him know had he been doing a horrible job at using a British accent.
There is a great moment in the movie when Pierce Brosnan's character first meets Robin Williams, and he's like, "What part of England are you from? Your accent seems a little muddled," or something. And I can't remember. Robin Williams just says something like, "Oh, I think he tries to figure out a way to answer by getting Pierce Brosnan to tell him where he's from, so he can say somewhere else." But yeah, it's just all those types of things are funny, and it's just a great movie. But
I mostly remember the trailer for this movie. It made it seem like the movie is just a flat out comedy. Like, oh, this father goes drag to get back with his family, and there's a lot of laughs.
And there is.
Yeah. But you go see it with those expectations, and then boom, they hit you with all the heartfelt, warm stuff.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, and then even the ending is kind of bittersweet.
It is.
And so it's kind of like, yeah, it kind of hits you with a little bit of everything. And this is, like I said, this is like when Christopher Columbus also was probably in his peak, because as of late, he's been kind of struggling with his directorial efforts. But, yeah, just good all-around movie. But, Dakota, what do you got next on your list?
I really had to think about, we only boiled it down to 3 movies to kind of sum up this very uneven era in filmmaking.
Yeah.
Like, very, very uneven. But one I picked just because it kind of showed me something new was 10 Things I Hate About You.
Ah, yes.
Yeah. This is around the time it came out in 99. It came out around that time when you had all these kind of teen comedies.
Yeah, the late 90s was like high school teen comedies was like the whole late 90s and into the early 2000s even.
And they were all essentially the same.
Yes.
No matter how hard they tried to be different.
They were, yeah, same thing.
It's like you could take this actor and throw him in this movie and they're essentially playing the same character.
It's like, in this movie it's Jennifer Love Hewitt, but in that movie it'll be Sarah Michelle Gellar, but then we're going to do a movie where they're both in it together. And it's just like, yeah, it's just all the same.
Or the ugly duckling is the chick with the glasses and no makeup. Yes, that is truly an ugly duckling, Hollywood. Thank you.
Yeah, she's like this girl who had like super good looking, except like she's got this ugly ponytail and glasses. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But yeah, 10 Things I Hate About You, which is actually supposed to be like a modern teen version of what, Taming of the Shrew?
Yeah, it's a Taming of the Shrew. And I don't know, I had heard that, and I had access to this giant book of Shakespeare plays, and I went through it, and I think I only skimmed it, and I was like, I prefer the movie.
Thankfully, they made a movie.
Yeah, and this movie was kind of odd just because it had kind of the kids who were kind of cliched, like you'd expect in teen comedies, but they weren't like the ones the movie was focusing on.
Yeah, that's true.
And It was kind of refreshing in such a way that it really stood out. Like, who knows? I don't even honestly remember what other movies came out in 99. I think the only other
one... It was one of the biggest years of the 90s. I mean, that was like the year of Matrix and Sixth Sense and... Yeah, I think like that.
I think the only comedy I can remember from that year is I think that's when the second Austin Powers movie came out.
It could be.
Maybe.
I don't know. Something about Mary, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. But this one wasn't as raunchy, obviously, as the Austin Powers or Something About Mary, but I thought it was just really grounded. And I was a little ashamed to admit this in high school, but I connected with a couple of the characters. Maybe it's because I was like the older sibling that my mom was always like, oh, you gotta blah, blah, blah. If you go to over here, you gotta take your brother. And I was like, I want to take my brother and hang out with my friends, damn it. And then she'd smack me across the face for swearing. Just kidding. Just kidding. She would just glare at me and I'd kind of get this cold shiver down my back.
It took a dark turn. Yeah, and then this kind of had a who's who list for teenagers or playing teenagers who went on to become people who had successful adult careers, like Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Heath Ledger, Julia Stiles. She's still around a little bit. And then I'm trying to think who else is in this one. Who else was in this? Those were kind of the big 3 that are probably still around. Because I remember there was a couple who were big at that time that were in it, like the girl from Secret World of Alex Mack.
Yeah, and then I'm trying to remember who played the principal in this. But anyway,
yeah, I don't know, like the adult, yeah.
But yeah, it was just kind of, and at the same time, it was. You look at movies like this, and then of course, people have tried to redo the same thing. They tried to give the Scarlet Letter a more moderate or more modern retelling not that long ago with Easy A, and that's kind of in the same vein, but it just doesn't have that same touch to it.
Yeah. They've tried it a few other times, but none of them were quite as hit as this one was. Oh, Gabrielle Union was in it. Larry Miller, is that who you're thinking of?
He was the dad.
Allison Janney was in it.
I think she was like a teacher or something. Maybe the mom. I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen this.
But yeah, that was a huge hit right at the end of the 90s there. So we'll go on to my next one. My next one, I realize, is actually from the same year as Mrs. Doubtfire. I would have to say 1993, in my opinion, based on movies I enjoy from this decade, was like one of the best years for movies I like. But my next one is The Sandlot. This movie isn't a real good example of the 90s just because it takes place in the 60s. But it was in the vein of a very popular 90s TV show, The Wonder Years.
That's right.
Where you had the main kid that you're following in it. There's an adult narrator who's him as an adult telling the story of his childhood, which is what happened. The Wonder Year. Daniel Stern is the voice of the old Ben Savage. Is Ben Savage the one that was in?
Yeah.
Wonder Years? Yeah.
No, Fred Savage, I think.
Fred Savage. There it is. Ben was the one in Boy Meets World. Yeah, where Daniel Stern's the voice of the old Fred Savage in Wonder Years. And so in this, you had the main boy, Scott Smalls, played by an actor who's still working now. Oh, man, I'm blanking on his name all of a sudden. But and then you had actually it was the director of the movie did the narrating for it. Tom Geary. He played the main boy in it. And what this was is really just like an awesome childhood movie where even though it was the 60s, there were a lot of things in it you could still relate to, especially if you were a boy, like having a crush on a lifeguard, having a urban legend in your neighborhood about, whatever. In this case, it was that there was this giant beast dog, that had killed people and was guarding a junkyard and things like this. And so we kind of all had those things in our childhoods where there was always like this story and you're like, that isn't true. And then they're like, yeah, it is because so-and-so had had an uncle that blah, blah, blah. There's always things like that. And so there's just like a ton of relatable things in this, even though it, was supposed to be like the 60s. But it just was like, again, it was just another movie where it was like super, super fun. And I think what was cool about this era was that if this were made today, it would be different. In the 90s, when they made these like comedies like this with kids, like the kids just seem more believable. Whereas now, in these kids' movies, they all are playing like the Disney Channel kids.
Yeah.
Where it's like they're not really believable as kids because they're trying to all be like, I'm in a funny thing, and it's like they're almost like Woody Woodpecker kids now. Whereas in this time frame, it's like they all like were playing like believable kids.
Yeah, that was.
And these were like kids who like hadn't really been in other. They were all like kids who were trying to be actors, but then you see them in other things, and they were just kind of like okay in other things. But I think why they were good in this and why this movie worked was that the director just said, "Say these lines like this and just be a kid," Yeah,
this movie kind of has a lot of. It's almost like, from my point of view. I'm not saying this is probably how it is, but this movie kind of shares like some parallels with It a little bit. The parts with
or like Stand By Me or something. Yeah,
where these kids aren't like, they're not super cool and not popular and they're not like some great athletes. Although one of the kids does become one.
Yeah, they have one kid who's a real good baseball player, but yeah, they're just like the neighborhood kids that aren't like the cool kids, but they have their own group of friends. They have each other kind of thing. So, which is kind of what it was in Stand By Me, where it's like, they had each other. They were the Goonies. You know, that's kind of what the Goonies was too. Like they were the outcasts
Yeah.
who were their own group. But this movie was just, everything about it is just great. It's obscenely quotable. And there isn't like some goofy, weird CGI stuff in it. You know, it's just like, just a straightforward movie. It just seems so real. Everything it just seems so real and tangible where it's like, it just almost feels like these kids really are this way. It's played so straight and real and just has that fun feel. And it's just like it's just a cool, you know, kind of a cool like growing up story in the midst of all that too. But yeah, The Sandlot, if you've never seen it or only seen parts or haven't seen it in a long time, I would say it's definitely worth a rewatch and just pretend like the other 2 or 3 movies never happened. So
I don't know what you're talking about, Stephen.
Exactly. So Dakota, what's your next movie?
Oh, we come full circle now.
Yeah.
All right, this one also came out in. Oh, I'm sorry, yours came out in what, 93?
90. Both might have been 93 so far.
Oh, this one came out in 94.
I'm stuck in a rut. 94. Whoa!
And it was a little independent movie, which was filmed in black and white. I'm sure you know what I'm referring to at this point, Stephen. I am referring to Clerks. Yes, hold your applause, people. Oh, man, where to begin about this movie? This movie was just so offbeat, and the characters were borderline horrible, so much so that they probably deserved a punch in the throat.
Yeah, that's what's kind of... That's kind of the thing I get with like Kevin Smith's movies is like even your protagonists are just like deplorable people. Where it's like, okay.
Yeah, I caught this. I think it was I think I had to have been 13 at the time, and it was airing late on some channel. And the only reason I watched it is because, nothing else is on. Might as well see what this Kevin Smith guy is about, because he had put out a couple other movies in the 90s that were kind of a big thing, which I hadn't seen either. Like, I hadn't seen Mallrats or Dogma, I believe.
Yeah, that would have been like late 90s.
But I saw this, and it kind of just opened my mind up to what a movie can be, which is interesting because it was an independent movie, and it is literally supposed to take place over the course of a day. And it's just about essentially 2 guys, one guy in particular, just at their kind of meaningless job, just plodding along throughout the day, and just kind of having these experiences, which sometimes funny, sometimes a little horrifying. Just if you haven't seen it, just be warned, the ending can get a little crazy. But one of the reasons I love this movie so much is just that it never fails to make me laugh, even though I've seen it so much. And it's just because, especially I've gotten older, some of the things these characters say to one another kind of mirror like conversations I've had. And just kind of the scene, one scene that's just really stands out in my mind, even to this day, is that whole, the rebels are murderers because they blew up the Death Star and they killed all those contractors who weren't evil at all. And that spurred this whole argument, like, who's really on the wrong side of blowing up the Death Star.
Oh, God.
And that kind of mirrors just conversations I had with my friends at the time. Like,
yeah, well, yeah, and I know what you mean. Like, he kind of created this whole type of movie dialogue that was just like everyday conversation. I mean, even though he made it funny and kind of used it as like funny bits. And yeah, even if you don't like Kevin Smith movies, he really did, or is one of the kind of guys who paved the way for just like you mentioned, Dakota, like he opened the door for like how anyone could make a movie. You know, he just found his friends that he thought were funny and said, "Hey, play this part." And they made a movie for like what was Clerks made for, like $15,000 or something?
I think it was a little bit more than that, but
It was something pretty cheap.
yeah. Mostly from what I remember, he essentially had to sell his kidneys to get this movie made, but it wasn't anywhere to the extremes that
Well,
some
was
other...
this the one where he supposedly sold most of his comic book collection
Yes, he had some
to fund it?
He had some comic books that, honestly, had he held on to them for a few years, he probably could have got way more money out of them. But sadly,
He probably has them again.
couple Steve Ditko Spider-Mans, which I know, even in average shape, still go for a lot of money.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. So yeah, that's kind of the thing. Now, what was his reasoning for making this black and white? Just because of the camera he had, or was there?
He was kind of too much of a film student at the time. Like he agrees that had he shot the movie with the mindset he has now, he wouldn't have done that. It was just, he was too much of a student filmmaker, and he was trying to be artsy in a way.
Okay.
But yeah,
I didn't know if Schindler's List like had an effect on it. No, I was kidding. Now then he was one of those who like years later made a sequel, right? There's like a sequel to this,
yeah, I think it.
like in '06 or somewhere in there.
Yeah, I was supposed to. I think it was 12 years later or something. But and then he's still, of course, talking about how he's going to make a Clerks 3, but who knows if that'll ever play out or if it'll be.
Well, he is a nerd, and any nerd likes things in trilogies.
Yeah.
So well, now quadrologies, I guess sometimes too. But yeah, it's interesting, and so yeah, Kevin Smith obviously really, in a lot of ways, defined a certain niche of the population through the '90s, just in kind of what he did, starting with Clerks, and going forward into the Jay and Silent Bob era and things like that. So, but yeah, my next movie isn't going to be a real far jump again, and so it's only going to be a year after the other two I've talked about. I realize that all my movies are from '93 and now '94, and in this movie, I think really defines how comedies were done, at least a large amount of comedies, where you had your main characters were stupid but lovable and were on a road trip. Those were like the two big things you had in a lot of comedies for a long time, and when they still try to do it today a little bit. But the 90s was like, they were all like, your main characters were like offbeat stupid, and then you threw them on a road trip because you didn't know what else to do with them or something like that. Or it was a day in the life like Clerks was. And the one I'm referring to is the non-Oscar nominated but should have been movie Dumb and Dumber. Not the other two that were made or cartoon that they made, but the original 1994 one with Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels. I think the first time I saw it, I barely made it through because I was laughing. I was laughing so insanely hard at nearly every moment of the movie. This movie, like literally every single second of the movie, something stupidly funny is happening. It's insane that it could be that way, but even the opening credits is something stupid going on. Just everything from start to finish is just hilarious. But then what makes this one better than any of the other ones is that there's still this story of a friendship in the midst of that, and how they react to this beautiful girl that enters their lives and things like that. And so you don't there's they're funny or whatever, but what makes this one so much better is that it has this kind of whole friendship story wrapped around this whole ridiculousness that is these two idiots' lives. And man, if you've never seen this movie, or if you've only seen the horrible prequel and sequel that were made, watch this one. And I'm telling you, it's just, oh man. And it holds up for the most part, except for like people used cordless phones and there weren't really any cell phones involved in this movie. But it holds up just in terms of like most of the things that go on other than technology. And so it just stays funny in those ways, and has a soundtrack that I think really defines the 90s. When you got groups like Crash Test Dummies and things doing your soundtrack, where it's just got all these ridiculous 90s songs in it.
Well, the two brothers that made this movie, that's kind of what their thing was, because they also made Kingpin, and they did
which was like
thing.
What, before this or after it?
It was after.
Oh, okay.
But they did the same thing, and that was also about two guys who were pretty stupid traveling cross country. Yeah, there was a lot of when you say there was a lot of movies like that where it was two idiots just kind of traveling around the country, you essentially just summed up like all the like comedies that were aimed at men.
Yeah. Well, and then there was what was his name? The guy who did Old School stuff, Todd Phillips.
Yeah.
Who realized, hey, we should take the road trip idea with Dumb Guy's idea and combine it with a teen comedy, and he made the movie Road Trip.
Yeah.
And so it was like,
I think that's...
you had him kind of make this conglomeration of all the comedies of that time period, into one type of movie.
Oddly enough, I think that's what killed it, too, because you didn't really see many after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you had Chris Farley's two big movies that everyone kind of remembers for him.
Yeah, Tommy Boy and Black Sheep are both road trip movies where he was a dumb, lovable guy.
Yeah, with David Spade.
Yep.
You had probably the other famous duo from the 90s with their movie, but that was an animated form, Beavis and Butthead. That's what their movie was about.
Yep.
Just a lot of them.
Well, even the Farrelly brothers eventually, this was more in the early 2000s, did a movie about twin brothers that were connected at the liver or something.
Yeah.
Called Stuck on You, and then that was a road trip movie. I mean, that was just like, that's what you did. Because you didn't know what to do with them. It's like, what do we do with them? We send them on a road trip because we don't know what else to do. It's kind of like what TV shows do, like, send them to Hawaii because we don't know what to do right now. And so you send them off somewhere. That's why Napoleon Dynamite changed the game again for like this whole independent comedy type world where it was like, it was just everyday life again.
Yeah.
And finding the humor in just everyday life with the quirky people around you. And so, yeah, but the 90s was just road trips with dumb people. But Dumb and Dumber was the best.
That was a good time to be traveling around the country, though, because gas was under $1.
Yeah. It always cracks me up. Maybe I've even mentioned this on this show in the past, but there's this shot of Reginald VelJohnson in Die Hard standing outside of a gas station looking at the Nakatomi Plaza, and you see the gas station sign, and it says like 74 or 75 cents a gallon, and it's like, oh, those were the days. It's like even when I first started driving, I was like mad when gas went over $1. Like, come on.
Yeah, I think when I got my learner's permit, I think it was at 94 cents.
Yeah, it was like, because when Dakota and I were first kind of starting to drive and have licenses, gas was like in the high 90s. It's like, don't go over $1. No, it was like $1.05. It's like the world's gonna end.
Yeah, it went over $1, and everyone's like, I'm gonna start riding a horse, or I'm gonna start biking everywhere.
Yeah,
and none of that happened.
What are those Segway doohickeys? Oh yeah. Oh man, just funny to think about that now. And then you can go back, and I'm sure our parents are like, yeah, well, gas was whatever. A nickel. I don't know.
23 cents.
Whatever it was, but times are a-changing. So, but yeah, that's definitely another one that when I think of the 90s and movies that just changed the game and just made me laugh or feel something or whatever, Dumb and Dumber just has to be on that list for a lot of reasons. And so I think with that, though, we'll kind of bring us to a close. But Dakota, why don't you go ahead and say your 3 again real quick?
All right, my 3 were True Romance, 10 Things I Hate About You, and Clerks.
Clerks, all right. And mine were Mrs. Doubtfire, The Sandlot, and Dumb and Dumber. And those were my 3 movies. Mine I realized were from just 2 different years, 93 and 94. And oh my gosh, and you people who've listened to our show in the past, and I don't mean you people in a bad way. You know this. Dakota and I talk about 90s in movies all the time. And so you guys, there's so many we could have talked about that we love. But, you just got to narrow it down to 3. We tried to find ones we haven't really brought up on the show and just be like, these are some movies we really enjoyed and really meant something to us for one reason or another. Because obviously, if we're going to combine this list into best of, obviously things like Jurassic Park and Saving Private Ryan and some of those types of movies.
The Big Lebowski.
Braveheart. Some of those types of movies would be on there too, but it's just like we want to narrow it down to kind of 3 different ones that don't get talked about maybe quite as much by us or some other people too. And so we hopefully you enjoyed this sit down as we talked about these movies. And so but we're gonna have to kick you out of our crib now. We gotta get some shut eye. So we be getting out of here. So this is Steven.
And this is Dakota.
See you later.